right, everybody, here we go. Welcome to episode 9 of Taking Stock. This is a hobby content collaboration between the Sports Cards Live and the Sports Card Dad YouTube channels. It is Tuesday night, August the 15th, 2023, and my name is Jeremy Lee. That handsome fella right over there is none other than DPZ, Mr. Dennis Zender. Dennis, how you doing tonight?
I'm doing well, my friend. How are you?
I'm doing well too. It's been a busy time, but here we are. Let's keep on doing what we're doing. We do want to thank everybody for the engagement and for joining us. Last episode of Taking Stock, we took stock of the 2023 National Convention. If you are not yet subscribed to the Sports Cards Live or the Sports Card Dad YouTube channels, please take a moment and do so. And as always, on any live stream I'm involved in, your comments and your questions are in play. So, Dennis, tonight we are talking about off-field court ice shenanigans and how behaviors that have nothing to do with an athlete's team, sport of excellence, nothing to do with behavior that have nothing to do with what they do for a living, have nothing to do with their team, their teammates, or their profession as an athlete, how those behaviors can impact the hobby of which you and I are a part of. And this is not a discussion we're going to have about whether or not anyone is innocent or guilty. That's not for us to decide. This is about how do these behaviors and the responses and the reactions to them impact a player's status in the sports card world. I think that's pretty clear what we want to do. Obviously, what triggered this topic for this week was the Wander Franco news that came out and the allegations against him and the immediate sort of responses and posts we're seeing and content being created around it. And I'm seeing people upset that they're holding his product, his cards. I'm seeing people who are making fun of other people who are holding on to his cards, who have his cards, who invested in his cards. And that's just sort of it's par for the course in terms of this hobby. So let's take a second here. Let's say hello to the chat so far, and then we're going to jump in and get some thoughts. And we want to get your guys' thoughts too. Again, we have a bit of a framework for this episode. Dennis and I, we came up with we have some bullet points, but we are relying on you guys to help us just steer the discussion and talk about what you would like to. Angel Baby here came in earlier and said it's bad collecting to truly invest in a given player until such time as either he or she has gone beyond year 3. Seems that Wander Franco proved my point today. So year 3, I don't know that, Dennis, I don't know that the year matters because behaviors can occur after year 3, even after retirement, which we've seen in the Brett Favre example.
Brett Favre is a great example of that. He's been retired and it seemed like a pretty rock solid guy to collect. I think you think of Karl Malone, although there's people that have is insinuated that people knew about that for a while, but that seems to have come out after his playing days, or it become more well known after his playing days. And you can have the Ja Morants, you can have the Wander Francos. I mean, I worry Fernando Tatis. I mean, I don't think he's as collectible as he once was. You think about Barry Bonds, Mark McGwire. The problem I see with all of this is that regardless of whether they're proven innocent or guilty in the court of law, there's a stain. And I believe that, in my opinion, I don't think Wander Franco ever recovers. Even if he plays really, really well, he's going to have to do something monumental to get himself out of this. I think and that makes me really nervous as a collector of his cards. That makes me nervous as a prospector of baseball cards, the Bowman first. Man, you really got to be careful. Not only do you have to play well and be one of the best, in that class and one of the best players in baseball, but they have to be model citizens and well after they retire. I think it's always something we got to consider. It was a reminder of that recently.
For sure. I mean, if you woke up yesterday, I believe it was yesterday, and you held several or lots of value in Wander Franco cards, you're in damage control mode. And I wanted to ask, and I asked the chat as well, like, if you were that person, what do you do? Do you go and sell everything right away? Do you wait it out? Do you wait it out and think, you know what? This might just be an accusation. It might be a false accusation. Somebody could be trying to extort him. Somebody could be trying to get back at him. But then where my mind comes back to is, in the court of public opinion, does it even matter if he's innocent or guilty at this point?
Nope.
Is the damage done? Now,
Yep.
His reputation among, just society as a professional athlete, sure, maybe his reputation is done. But what about in the sports card hobby? Does the sports card hobby respond any differently to this than general sports fans respond to it? Does the hobby care as much as the sports fan does?
That's a great question. That's a great question, Jeremy. Joe Hobby down here has a terrific comment, and I didn't even think about this. And he says that fascinating that Kobe survived the rape case. The court records are pretty incriminating. Rob Pelinka saved his career. I don't know who Rob Pelinka is. I'm imagining this as PR guy, but you're actually right. I mean, Kobe Bryant is beloved. Obviously, he had a terrible tragedy that ended his life. So people, maybe they just brushed over it. He did have a long career after the event for people to kind of let go of it. But there was some feedback on that once he passed away. People were, critical of those that were reporting on some of the, the less, delightful parts of his life and career and legacy. But he's still incredibly collected. So I guess there can be an exception. But I mean, Wander Franco has to be one of the best baseball players to ever live. I'm not saying Kobe is, but Kobe's like a top 10 basketball player of all time in most people's, top 10s. So you're probably going to overcome that. Not to say that it's okay, or, again, like, we're not talking about condoning any behavior here, and he was actually, I think, if I'm not mistaken, I don't know if you remember this, Jeremy, but was he actually convicted?
I don't know.
I don't remember that either. Maybe the chat will know that, but it's incredible though. You're right. Like, social media changed everything. That's just a really good point. Kobe Bryant survived it, but do you have to be that exceptional and transcendent to survive? Michael Jordan and the gambling. I mean, you can pretty much name a lot of these big players we had. Mickey Mantle and the drinking.
Patrick Kane, the Chicago Blackhawk, punched out a taxi driver in Buffalo, apparently. And that did impact I remember when that happened, that did impact the hobby love that he got. But now he's going to go down as one of, if not the best U.S.-born hockey players of all time. Back to Kobe. The way Kobe died with his daughter Gianna in the helicopter, I think the impact of that almost made people forget about, his infidelity, right? And is that something that should impact a player, the hobby love that the hobby gives, or the values associated with the cards? I don't know. That's up for every individual to decide. But as far as the way he passed away, all of a sudden there's fewer autographs out there of his. He's not going to sign anymore. So I think you see values respond to that tragedy. But as for when he was in hot water, I mean, that's a long time ago now. And I'm sure that his cards they suffered some devaluation because of it. But I think that they have recovered very strongly since then, as we've seen. We've got a lot of comments here, so we're gonna run through some of them right now. And say hello to Perk. Ben Diamond says, I think aside from just negative/illegal actions, the way a player carries themselves, endorsements, marketing plays a huge role. So many greats don't want the spotlight, i.e. Tim Duncan. Again, that Ben is right. When we're talking about he says the way a player carries himself, I'm talking about what I'm saying is that's the behavior. That's behaviors that are off the court, off the ice, off the field. 90s hockey collector, hello, collector's dream, Philly Joe. Fall Creek says Tatis went from number 1 of the 2019 class to about number 3 or 4. So in terms of hobby love, I think is what Fall Creek is talking about, because they don't, you do something stupid, you don't lose skill. You lose skill. You don't lose talent. So it says, look at Pete Rose. And Pete Rose, another great example. But it's a little bit different for Pete Rose. He is widely collected. He gets a ton of hobby love. But what Pete Rose is missing is the ability to get into the Hall of Fame. That's what Pete Rose is missing. We'll expect Dennis back here shortly. Pete Rose is just precluded from being admitted into the Hall of Fame. And that itself, that little fact right there is going to hurt his hobby values because there won't be as many people who the people that need that collect Hall of Famers don't need his card. So Pete Rose, a great example, and one that we had noted of it does directly impact his values. So there's definitely that. Vintage Card Collector says, what is safer, retired players? True. Safest, dead players.
Dead players.
He's right. I mean,
he's not wrong.
He's 100% correct. But it's funny, and this what I like about this comment is it's not a retired player is not totally safe. We've already discussed that. Players in retirement can do stupid things. O.J. Simpson comes to mind. James Wynn says, buy Shohei only, dump all Wander and Tatis. Joe Hobby, we talked about that one already. Jim in FLA says, sell. If it's true, those cards are totally worthless.
I know.
Yeah, if it's true, and if he is banned from playing baseball, then they're totally worthless. If it is true, and he is not banned from playing baseball, I mean, then are they totally worthless? I don't know. I think some people will overlook the allegation.
I don't know. I don't know. I disagree. I think if you're holding Wander right now, and I'm not, do whatever you want. It's your business. But man, if I had it, I'd be selling it as fast as possible. Even though you're selling into the market, obviously there's going to be a lot of people dumping. But I don't know. I don't know if I trust that. That's a pretty big deal, and I think that's going to be a stain, like I said earlier. And people have pretty strong convictions about that in society, and rightfully so. And I think that it's just going to be hard to overcome that, in my opinion. But gambling, drinking, all that kind of stuff. I'm not saying any of it's good. I don't know. It's just, I guess it remains to be seen.
There will be people that still collect his cards if he remains a player. He will, if he hits a World Series winning home run. You don't think there'll be people buying his cards? Oh, trust me, there will be people buying his cards regardless of what he was convicted or not convicted of doing. But if he is convicted, obviously he won't be playing anymore. Or I shouldn't say obviously. I doubt he'll be playing anymore. Okay. Slater says Omar Vizquel and Roberto Alomar are good examples.
After the fact, after they retired, that we learned about a lot of things, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, Joe Hobby is right. Social media did change everything. All of a sudden, all the information is out there all the time. Brave says you're dealing with human beings, whether it's sports, politics, business. If you choose to put your money into other human beings that you have no control over, there should always be an assumed risk. No doubt about it, Braves. And this is one of the reasons why myself, as a hobbyist, a collector, and somewhat of an investor in sports cards, I don't buy the latest rookies almost ever. I don't prospect. I think it's super high risk in my opinion. And I'll leave it to the rest of the people that enjoy. And it is fun for a lot of people. And some people are really good at it. I wouldn't be good at it, so I don't do it. And I also feel it's too risky. Braves makes the point that is just so true. If you're putting your money into other human beings, you have no control. There is always assumed risk. No doubt about that. Dave Snyder says we are fickle and we are a led society. We allow ourselves to be influenced by others all the time. Ben Diamond says Kobe was not convicted. He reached a settlement. Thank you, Ben Diamond. Jim says, are you actually comparing? I don't know what that's about, Jim. Fall Creek says if golf cards were popular, I don't think Tigers would be affected. There's another great example. Tiger Woods. Yeah, I mean, Tigers cards have not suffered. Now they have gone up and down in value when he's been injured because of getting into driving his car into trees. And then, you're not going to play golf anymore. You're not going to win a tournament. People aren't going to want to buy your cards as much. But Tiger Woods is one of these guys, almost maybe like Kobe Bryant, whose accomplishments and his just level of being loved in society, it almost transcends anything that could bring him down because his cards are still, he might be the all-time greatest golfer, and people want cards of the all-time greatest, whether or not he cheated on his wife, whether or not he drove his car into a tree. Braves goes on to say, not saying it's right, but usually settlements tend to make people believe there is some admission of guilt. You'd think, or it's just like, I don't want to deal with this here. Take some money. I've got a ton of it, and I want to move on. I mean, but I think Braves is right. That's what people do assume. Dave Snyder says that Patrick Kane thing was so a targeted event. Okay, don't know what you mean by that, Dave, but maybe Patrick Kane threw his fist at the taxi driver's head as his target. Angel Baby says, just repeating what we watched 30 minutes ago on Fox News. Ben Diamond says, Kobe admitted to having relations with her and acknowledged she didn't think it was consensual. Okay. Jim says Kobe's case was dismissed. Chicago Blackhawks scandal with Kyle Beach indirectly involved Kane and so there's just so many examples out there. And this one here is this was a terrible situation with I don't even want to get into what it was. It was just a bad situation.
Terrible. That front office got housed. I mean, they cleaned house. I just don't think that had anything to do with Kane and Taves at all, though. I think that wasn't.
That's like it's like when somebody is just being quiet about it, right? Or helping hide something, not bringing it to light. That's what happened. That was the allegation against some of the other Chicago Blackhawks personnel. Perk says, I feel for genuine Rays and Wander Franco fans who have invested in his cards. For others who have dealt in his cards, it's just another example of why you don't put all your eggs in one basket. That's true. Diversify, I think, is one. If you are going to be a collector, investor, hobbyist who's putting money into a young player, an active player, especially a young a young player or a prospect, you might want to diversify a little bit. If you are looking at it as an investment, you might want to diversify and put some money into dead players or retired players as well, because they are less likely to do something that could impact their values. Although we know retired players do stupid things as well. Mosaic Mind says he's being investigated for an alleged illegal relationship with a minor. Angel Baby, yep, okay. Lots of Kobe talk. All right. Piece of the game in the house. What's going on, fellas? Is the absolute safest plays are fictional. So before we went live, Dennis was talking about, that old line that Charizard can't tear his ACL.
No.
The absolute safest plays might be fictional, but this is sports card talk here, not trading card talk, so to speak. And it's this is a different topic.
We love the risk, though, don't we, Jeremy? I mean, I think that's what we kind of. There's a little bit of that.
Not me.
I don't know. I kind of feel like when you take that risk when you prospect, there's a reason why everybody does it. They want to kind of be the guy that knew about. You were early on a guy that turned out to be just tremendous, right? That's a cool feeling as a collector. I think
as a prospector, that's what prospectors get off on, is getting it right. Picking a guy who then becomes a superstar, and then they can offload the cards, I guess, or maybe continue to hold them. Definitely some truth there. And I wanted to say just about, piece of the game brings up the fictional plays like, Star Wars and Pokemon and Batman and Superman and all these things, It's funny not funny, it's just interesting how sports cards are so ingrained with Pokemon and other trading cards, simply because of the medium of cardboard. Otherwise, these are completely different hobbies for the most part, but sports card collectors tend to get drawn into some of this stuff. And maybe it's not collectors, maybe it's the investors and the flippers who get drawn in the most. And really, it's like they're completely unrelated. A good example of that was VFriends. Like all the sports card content creators were talking about VFriends and how they didn't like it. Well, why would you like it? You're a sports card collector. That's not for you, so you don't need to like it. But that's a tangent for sure. Ben Diamond talks about Karl Malone impregnating a 14-year-old girl. So I don't know how old he was when he did that, but I'll be honest, I don't remember hearing about that until very recently. So
me too.
I don't know if that hurt him at all in the hobby. I guess we'll see. John says, how do you think the NHL will deal with the suspension of the 5 players involved in the 2018 World Junior scandal? I think it was the hazing scandal. Says, do you think Bettman will make his decision on Logan Mailloux at the same time? I have no idea what Bettman will do. I have no idea what the NHL will do either, John. Sorry, I just can't speak for what they'll do. But maybe they will extend their draft year by a year or two, or maybe they will just ban them from playing. Tough to say. I'm not a big fan of hazing and bullying. We see a lot of that everywhere. And my vote would be just ban them from playing.
I agree.
Happened to Brendan Leipzig was the hockey player, played for the Toronto Maple Leafs, and his career was ruined for, I think they were showing pictures of a young lady that a bunch of players, or maybe him alone, had their way with. So bad overall. Really, really bad stuff right there.
Yep. No,
Angel Baby is going to pivot towards Julio Rodriguez for now. Fire Sports. Roger Clemens won 7 Cy Youngs, and his cards sell cheap because of PEDs. Therefore, Wander cards are done.
Hey, that is an interesting. Okay, there's a little bit of a pivot here, and you and I both talked about this. We knew this would happen with our chat because you guys are just terrific. Okay, so now that Wander is done, let's just pretend his goose is cooked. From a hobby perspective, the people now shift over, and now is there an opportunity for another player to get a little bit more shine because you have one of those big, high-profile players no longer taking that shine? A guy like Julio Rodriguez could probably benefit from that, or maybe Ronald Acuna Jr. could benefit from that. That's something to think about.
It is. That's exactly what I wanted this episode to become. Was never mind. Like, we're throwing out all these examples. Fine. This isn't meant to be. This is not. We're not sitting here to assign blame or judge any of these athletes for what they did. This is supposed to be about how does the hobby respond and what is our best move if we are holding cards of these individuals. That's where I was hoping this would go, but we'll go with the chat anyway here. Mosaic Mind says Tiger cheated on his wife and he suffered for it. What it is was wrong, but not illegal. Yeah, that's true, Mosaic Mind. But from what I see in hobby content, there's no shortage of judgment and the court of public opinion is very strong in our hobby. So it doesn't matter if he did it or not. It doesn't matter if it's right or wrong, if it's legal or illegal. It's just like trimming a card is not illegal, but we know it's bad, but it's not illegal. Similar thing, right? Similar but different. I get it. Mike Kemmel says, I stopped collecting Ovechkin cards after the Ukraine invasion and him not removing Instagram picture with Putin. I mean, there's all sorts of reasons why people are going to stop collecting a player. Politics plays a part as well. It's another great example. However, Mike Kemmel and others who have stopped collecting Ovechkin, there's not enough of them that stopped because his cards are still doing very, very well.
Can I ask you a question then? Okay, Alex, there's not enough of them. What if something really detrimental came out about Wayne Gretzky? What happens? I know you guess it depends on what it is, right? But let's pretend it's something pretty aggressive. I mean, not to say that would ever happen.
Well, Kobe, Tiger is where I go back to. I'm not saying he's immune, but I don't think it depends what it is. OJ Simpson kind of behavior could really hurt him. People might want to, it just depends what it is. Gambling, a drunk driving accident, probably not going to hurt his card values for much more than a week or two. I don't think.
Yeah, no. Probably
Fire
true.
says, another note, Tom Brady was suspended 4 games for cheating, yet nobody cares. Again, transcends the violation. It doesn't matter. People don't care. The guy's got 7 Super Bowl rings. That is the impact of that is more so than the impact of cheating in a single game and being suspended 4 games.
This is like fascinating social experiment right here. The fact that someone can transcend this the morality that we assign to everybody, but we go, yeah, well, we're going to give that guy a little bit more of a pass. I mean, I know not everything's all equal, right? I mean, it's not apples to apples and oranges to oranges and all these different things, but still, it's interesting. You're making. I'm seeing a common denominator here. Kobe, Michael Jordan. Think about Babe Ruth and all the stuff he did, and Mickey Mantle. None of these guys were, I don't know. It's very interesting as you go, okay, but they can survive it because of their transcend. They're so epic in nature. They transcend it. Everything. So it's like, okay, now we're going to give them a pass. Man, that's fascinating to think about.
It is.
It's blowing my brains.
We got some more comments coming that support that too. Joe Hobby says collectability is connected to likability, and all kinds of actions can negatively affect someone's likability. Tyson and Kobe are still beloved despite rape incidents. Social media ended that era, though. Yeah, maybe if they did it now, it wouldn't. People wouldn't have moved on from it, but it still was out there, and people have moved on from it. Again, transcending their status transcends their violation. Vintage Card Collector says we are more forgiving if the player is an all-time great. Tatis and Wander haven't proven anything, so their values are much less likely to recover, which is kind of interesting because on the one hand, I think to myself, these guys are like in their early 20s. They're babies. Like these are kids, you know, these are very young people. And we have expectations that they're behaving like grown adults, and they're just not. Their bodies are grown, but mentally and experientially, they're just not. They don't have enough life experience. So we put these super high expectations and require standards on them. Yet for an older person, an older player who made a mistake, we're more willing to let them get away with it. That to me is backwards. I'm not saying anybody should be doing what they're doing. I'm just saying it's a little bit backwards the way we're seeing one over the other there. But that's just the way it goes sometimes.
This whole episode is you and I disclaiming ourselves to death. I'm not saying it. I'm not saying it.
Well, we have to. It's a sensitive topic, so I think it's
I totally get it. It makes sense.
There was a comment above that I don't know. It seemed like it was almost accusing us of doing something, and I just blew right by it because it was a stupid comment. Dave Snyder says, sometimes even when the truth is known or is so obvious, we still don't see the fix happen, like Shoeless Joe. Yeah, fair enough. John, it was the Kane and Taves' silence in that issue. Karl Malone has admitted to it, and the kid made the NFL. It's a known fact. Okay. But again, I haven't personally seen any negative impact on Karl Malone's hobby status at all myself. Now, I might not have seen it. It could still have happened. I just didn't see it. So how about this one, Dennis? Brave says O.J. Simpson may be the most interesting case of something like this. Not convicted, but seems like most people think he got away with murder and people still collect him. I mean, I do think he got away with murder. I don't have the evidence, but that's my gut feel from what I saw. And I mean, I remember that whole thing I was watching the Chevy or the Bronco drive on the highway when that was happening. I mean, I remember it clearly, as I'm sure many of you guys do. And I'll tell you though, as somebody who was very avidly collecting Hall of Fame rookie cards, NFL, I never picked up an O.J. Simpson. It concerned me. I just didn't know that I wanted that in my collection. So that did hurt him. At least I didn't buy him, and I'm guessing some others didn't as well. But does it matter if he was proven, the court said innocent or not guilty? But it didn't matter. It didn't matter what the court said at that point.
I don't think it matters. I think the court of public opinion matters the most. And I think the other variable is how great are you? And if you aren't great, it depends on what it is that happens that you're accused of. I think it could be detrimental. Yeah.
No. Okay. Mosaic says, and here's kind of like, what do you do now? You're holding Wander Franco cards. He said, if you bought his cards high, sell them now. I think cut your losses is what Mosaic Mind is saying. Cut your losses, take those funds out, redeploy them into something else. If you bought low, hold and observe. You might be able to get back out. So, but the thing about that comment is, and it's hard. This is a psychological sort of barrier that we have as humans, which is it shouldn't matter what you paid for it because that's a sunk cost. You can't go back and change it. You can only move forward. So if you would sell them now because you bought them high, shouldn't you sell them now because you bought them low as well? I don't know. Interesting comment. I'm not saying it's not a good comment by Mosaic Mind. I'm just not sure that I would proceed in that manner myself. So we'll see. Back to the NHL and these upcoming suspensions. John says, I think the NHL will suspend the 5 players so Cale Makar can go to the Olympics. All right, good. Perk says, I think Tiger Woods is a good example of someone whose market has stayed strong, but his accomplishments are so above and beyond. And I think his market would be exponentially higher without all the drama. Mm-hmm. I think I agree with Perk. I would not have included the word exponentially. Exponentially means like way higher. His cards are already pretty high on par with other, GOATs. So I don't know, but I think Perk is right. I think they might be a little bit higher because some people don't want to hold a card to this guy because of his behaviors off the greens. So we'll see.
What, can you think about this though? Apply that same logic to Barry Bonds. What if Barry Bonds, there was no suspicion of him, and let's do this too. let's pretend at Barry Bonds, there's no suspicion of PEDs, and his numbers weren't as inflated because he was all natural the whole time, and they were more like Ken Griffey Jr.'s numbers. Still really, really good. Transcendent player. I bet you his cards are like double the value they are right now. His bigger cards.
True. Joe Hobby says the fact that LeBron has gone 20 years without one legal trouble or one scandal is pretty fascinating. Although he does get into some trouble from commenting on politics, I believe.
Yeah.
He goes on to say he came into the league before social media, Kobe, MJ, Zion, Ja, but not LeBron. Good role model. I mean, listen, whatever his opinions are in politics or his comments have been on politics, I'm going to give him a pass because he's built schools and put kids all the way through school and into college. Like, the guy has done more good than bad, in my opinion. And he still gets a bad rap by a lot of people simply because he's not Michael Jordan. That seems to be the biggest knock against LeBron. He when he's compared to MJ, he's lost in 6 finals, whatever it is, etc. John says it's not about the hazing and bullying in regards to the Team Canada thing. It's about the sexual scandal with the girl and 5 players. Okay, thank you, John. The Hobby with Cage says if tag grading, that's my shirt, were to grade each of your performances as hobby participants, content creators, what would your grades be and why? I'll tell you, Cage, I can tell you very, very confidently that our grades would be accurate. Our grades would be transparent. Our grades would be reproducible. You would get the same grade every time. If you graded our content 100 times in a row, you would not get a bump. You would not have to pay us twice to do the same job that we should have done right the first time, because we do it right the first time. So there you go. That's what our grades would be, and that is why.
Well, that's what your grade would be. I think my grade would be a 7.
Okay. Anthony says the rule to buying goats during their playing career is the 7-year rule. Wait 7 years before you buy them. Example, Patrick Mahomes. I kind of live by that rule. I don't know that I've like kind of targeted 7 years like Anthony says, but I wait until a player is established before I start buying heavy into. I waited with Connor McDavid. I'll wait with players before I buy their cards.
How long with Connor? How long was enough for you with Connor?
Probably 4 seasons, I would say. Probably 4 is when I started collecting.
You could just see he was just above so much above everybody else.
And listen, in his first, second, third, fourth game in the NHL, I forget which game it was, he had like a collarbone injury that took him out for a while, and all these people had money invested, and there you go. He's out right away. I mean, it's tough to do. Now, if you would have held on, you're looking good right now because his cards have done very well. And I'll be totally transparent. Had I bought earlier, I would have got in cheaper. But I also didn't get in earlier on many other players. I wait, and then I'm going to pay more for the players who prove themselves. But I'm also not losing money or hobby capital to buy all the players who do nothing, which would probably be a greater loss for me than the gains I would have made on Connor if I had. And I mean, these would be unrealized gains I'd made on Connor by buying him early. So
right. Yeah, that makes sense.
Mosaic Mind says Clemens cards are also overproduced junk wax. There's something definitely there for sure.
Some cards, though, not all.
James Wynn says, I do recall Einstein married his cousin. Piece of the Mind says there's a long way to go in. Sorry, piece of the game. Long way to go in this matter. Sounds like a shakedown to me. Always is when big money is involved and on the table. These players are under so much scrutiny. End of the day, let the process play it out. Yeah, I agree with that. Let the process play it out. They are under scrutiny, right, Dennis? But the process can play out. But what do you, as a holder of their cards, want to do with those cards while the process is being played out? Dennis, you're
sell. I'm out. Nope, you're done. That's too.
There you have it.
I'm going to say that only because of the allegation is a pretty serious one. Now, if he was caught with PEDs, I don't know. I don't know. I still love Barry Bonds. I still love those cards. I mean, I love the fact that my guy Griffey did that, but I still think Barry Bonds is Hall of Fame. I think I think they're Hall of Fame players. I still think if it was like a PED thing and he came back and obviously was clean and tested and kicked butt and he was a transcendent baseball player, he could recover. He'd be fine. This is different. This is like the stuff that gets you put in jail. So I don't know. Sell.
Sell, he says. The man says sell. All right. Joe Hobby says, sadly, the takeaway for pro athletes will be pay the hush money. It worked for Kobe, and when Wander refused to pay up, it ended him. And that might be the case. Brave says, we all have some type of bias that allows us to overlook certain things about a player or a team. Everyone also has a line they're not willing to cross with that bias. Yeah, that's right. I mean, everyone has we have our own ethics. We have our own standards, our own, values, and we then take them and bring them into the hobby, and they help us decide where we're going to deploy our hobby capital. 90s hockey collector. This is a great comment here. This is the other side of things, Dennis. Do you guys think that exceptional behavior helps the hobby love? I think it's a fun question to think about in the context of all this kind of bad behavior. What about good behavior? Does it have the opposite effect of bad behavior?
Okay. Perfect example of this. Russell Wilson. Russell Wilson was perceived to be a saint, the nicest guy in the world. And I'm not saying he's a bad guy. He did a lot of great things while he was here in Seattle. A really good guy. But he had this reputation as being a really clean, goody two-shoes, doesn't do anything wrong, all the stuff. I think at some point, though, within the hobby and within the sports community, people start getting annoyed by that. And so they try to find something wrong with these guys that are exceptionally behaved. Like this, there's got to be some dirt somewhere. So it almost becomes counterproductive for the person to be, it's almost like you just need to be quiet. Don't post things about the things you're doing. Do them, privately, and it'll come out when it needs to come out in its own proper way. Just do it from a humble standpoint, not worrying about your brand and all that other garbage, and just be a really good player. I think Trout's a good example. He's just a really good player. Now he's getting hurt, but that's naturally what happens when you get that age. So I think that he's a great example of a very strong market for a player. His numbers are going to start declining, but there's nothing he's been caught up in. Well, there's potentially something, but it's a whole nother topic. But he's, for the most part, stayed out of all that. He doesn't have this big brand he's trying to push and all that. So I don't know. Sometimes having the exceptional behavior, it draws that, like, I don't think that's true. There's got to be something up here.
So So we there's a couple comments here. Like Fire Sports here says, how about Shoeless Joe Jackson? He was banned for cheating. And then Mosaic Mind here says, Ty Cobb, super racist and killed someone.
Wow.
Right now, time can heal all wounds, including some of these egregious behavioral type of issues. And maybe that's what it takes for some of these players. But what's important here is that Ty Cobb and Shoeless Joe Jackson are legends. They are legends, and they were great, the greatest of their time. So they have, the hobby has forgiven and forgotten, or forgotten and forgiven, it seems like. And I think that'll happen with more players like we're seeing now. Tiger Woods, Kobe Bryant. We've seen it. Brett Favre might have his hobby love reinvigorated. Patrick Kane. Nobody cares that he punched a taxi driver anymore. I don't know. Maybe the taxi driver deserved it. Who knows? Or was he just drunk and punched some guy? Who knows? Who knows? But I do like that comment by 90s Hockey. Thank you for that one so much. Brave says, not as much as it should, I'm sure, to the exceptional behavior. I think he's got a point right there. James Newen says, what if Wander keeps playing, but Topps decides to never print his image again? That's a really interesting comment, because what James is getting at here is, well, okay, so the guy did something bad. Topps decided not to print his card anymore. MLB decided to let him play. But what's the hobby going to do? Well, the hobby can't buy any more new cards. That could cause all of his old cards to be kind of more in demand, because there's just less options out there for people. That could actually help the values of his cards. But really, the rookie cards, the rookie year cards are all said and done. So maybe not. Maybe not. What do you think, Dennis? Any thoughts on that one?
I just wonder how the Players Association would factor into that decision. I don't know if
it's not. I think this is more of a hypothetical.
Okay, hypothetical. I think you're dead on. I think these earlier cards gain that much more attention and more value because of their scarcity of all product for him. Yeah.
Jason Puck says the hobby needs a Dennis Rodman. Yeah, I mean, who doesn't need a Dennis Rodman, right? Daniel A says, in most of these cases, collectors get over this stuff because there are always new controversies that make people shift their attention, that make people move on. That's my take. I think Daniel's right. And I mean, it's funny because in our hobby, there's controversies and there's new headlines, there's newsworthy events almost every day, at least every week. I mean, even our friend, The Hobby with Cage, puts out a weekly 1-minute newsreel. If there wasn't news, Cage wouldn't have to do his weekly 1 minute with Cage. So there's always something to talk about in this hobby. And if there isn't, some people will either manufacture something or go find something. But the point that Daniel's making that I agree with is we have a short memory because there's so much information coming at us 24/7 nowadays, because we all have our handy smartphones on our phone and we're often scrolling social media and other headline sources. Ben Diamond says, if you Google your favorite player and the word scandal together, you'll see almost all of them have skeletons in their closet. Yeah, I think that's a fair statement right there. Mosaic Mind says, Tiger was unquestionably the greatest golfer ever for a 15-year span. Not sure that sentence makes complete sense, Mosaic, because
I feel like that was longer.
But I get the point. He was the greatest for 15 years, and maybe still is. Maybe will always be. We'll see. We'll see. Joe Hobby says, early retirement is another issue to be aware of in the hobby. Many lost thousands when Andrew Luck retired out of the blue. Career expectations immediately end, and result is mass fan disappointment. Like, that's another. I'm glad Joe Hobby makes this comment, because this is kind of off-field behavior and decisions that impact the hobby response, the values of the cards, the enjoyment of people who collect these players. That would have been massively disappointing, not only because you can't watch your player play anymore, because you have money tied up in the cards. So that's a great comment, Joe. Kind of, it's not necessarily a behavior, but it's a decision. His behavior was he's no longer playing football. That in itself is a behavior. Not going to play football anymore. Anthony says, caught with steroids and ruined his career, but Carl Lewis got away with it. Thank you, Fire Sports Cards. Brave says, Trout and Griffey are accomplished players, but I'd say they both benefit in the hobby from being well-liked if comparing to more accomplished players. Yeah, that's a good one, Braves, because well-liked players will gain more hobby love. Ken Griffey Jr. is not the greatest baseball player of all time, maybe not even the greatest baseball player of his time, yet he is the most loved from a hobby perspective of his whole generation. I don't know anybody whose cards carry as much value as his do from, say, the 90s. What about you, Dennis? You collect him, so what do you have to say?
Yeah, I think Griffey's amazing. I mean, obviously, he's my favorite player, and I think he was one of the best. I'd argue Barry Bonds might have been better, but we'll never know, because Barry Bonds was obviously getting a little help on the side. But no, as far as transcending the sport, yeah, everybody talked about it. I mean, he had video games, shoes. I mean, he crossed over all the barriers, but it's hard. You have to wonder whether Bonds is actually better than Griffey. He might be. Even though I adore, I don't think it's the worst kept secret in the world that I adore that guy. Bonds could have been better. So the problem is we'll never know that because of the PED stuff. But yeah, I think they're likable. I mean, Griffey's very likable. He came back home, not home, but he came back to where he grew up as a player, where his brand was the strongest. Now he's an owner, the part ownership, minority owner of the team. He's very involved in baseball in general as an ambassador for the sport. He does for young black baseball players in colleges, the black college. He does a lot. He gives a lot back to the sport, and I think that's what endears him to people. Trout is just really quiet. I think he just doesn't say anything. So it's hard to get him to mess up when he just doesn't react or say anything. So, yeah.
Okay. No, appreciate the comments there for sure. Rage, what's up, Rage? Good to see you. Thanks for jumping in. John says, hot take, buy cards of players and established players during the offseason following an injury, which leads to a shortened season. Oddly, people have issues reading stats when players have short seasons. Yeah, they certainly do. I think it's a contrarian approach, right? When a player gets hurt, and that player, does eventually come back, the best time to buy those cards is when he gets hurt. A lot of people will offload just out of fear of what can happen, and they want to just dump him because he's not playing anymore. But yeah, that's a good time to be buying, I would think. Yep. Rage says 100% on the behavior thought. Appreciate that, Rage. John says Jaromir Jagr has my hobby love for his good, fun behavior. Coolest dude ever. Always keeping it real. Same for George Larocque. George Larocque's in the hobby business. I think he has a supply company. He's an old hockey player. The guy just needs to smile more, I would say. Mookie Chilson says Clemente is the best example. Died in the device of being humanitarian. Hobby reveres him for it and his incredible career. Yeah, good point right there. Rage says, look at someone like Kawhi Leonard. He isn't super collected because he's quiet, low-key persona. Right. People want more of a personality. Vintage says, my example of nice guys getting more hobby love is Barry Sanders. Awesome player. But I think there's a little added value because of his personality. Yeah, it is important. Again, earlier on, someone was saying likability helps to drive hobby love. Mookie Chilson says Clemente is a great example of an amazing human, died on a charitable mission. Hobby loves and reveres him for it. Yes, sir. Hobby Champs lets us know, though, that a lot of the negative Ty Cobb stuff was debunked. That is definitely important for us to keep in mind. Brave says, if you have such a bad character to the point it makes you infamous, it may actually help your popularity. There are people obsessed with mobsters and serial killers. That is true. But are they going to go out and buy and collect the cards? I mean, it's interesting. Paul Lesko, who will be my guest on Sports Cards Live this coming Saturday, he collects cards that are the subject of controversy and court cases. Yeah. That's what he wants to collect. So different, but kind of similar, controversial types of cards. So that's kind of cool. Mosaic Mind says young players like Wander could do bad things. That's true, but they're also targets for extortion and scams by people looking to exploit their fame for personal fortune. We can't overlook that, Dennis. That is completely true, and that's why I'm not gonna decide in my mind whether any of these people are innocent or guilty. I mean, OJ's kind of a different case. We saw the court case unravel. It seemed like he just had an all-star team of attorneys to help him out. But outside of that one, yeah, I mean, where's the evidence? Where's the evidence that these guys did that? And I'm not saying that you've got to show it to me. I just hope that the due process occurs and they're given a fair chance, if they are innocent, to show that they are. Now, the hobby's already going to judge them and say, no, it's too late. Doesn't matter if you're innocent or not. We're still going to probably dump your stuff and not buy your cards anymore, and you're going to have your values are going to go down. I think that's what we've established is going to happen,
right?
When that does go on. Walter Payton, another loved player, passed away early. Ray says Ken Griffey Jr. 100% the best player of his time. White Sox
Love
Tom,
you, Ray.
though. White Sox Tom, though, says Frank Thomas was better and he got a ring. So there you go.
No. I'm wearing the hat, but it doesn't mean I agree with you.
Anthony says sometimes it's better to retire early at the highest peak of your career than a low peak at the end of a long career. So I think that's true. That certainly resonates with me. We've seen players play past their prime. And I don't even know what's going on with Jonathan Taves of the Chicago Blackhawks. He's not been the same player for 5 years. He's been hurt, but should he have retired? I'm probably not. Why would you retire at that young of an age? But it might have helped his career if he did. And then you got players that retired due to injury. Bobby Orr had a very short career, one of the most beloved hockey players of all time. Walter Payton's another good example in football as well. There's lots of examples like that.
There are a lot of examples like that, Jeremy, but I think Taves is a top 100 hockey player anyway, right? I mean, I think I remember seeing him in that list. I know Patrick Kane was, but wasn't Taves in that list, the top 100 hockey in NHL.com?
Probably, but now, if that list were to be made now, I don't know that he would still be listed. Because you have to look at the whole body of work, and I think they look at the whole body of work, and the whole body of work does include most recent years where his production has fallen off dramatically. So, yeah. Okay, let's see what else we have here. Skeppy says every sport in every era needs the ambassador, the young star, the prospect, and the villain. The problem is the best people are lost in the mix and not paid enough attention to, like the villains are. And that, right? I mean, it's the whole rubberneck kind of issue. People want to see a dumpster fire, and they will tune in for a dumpster fire. That goes without saying. Oh, and true. OJ is nuts too. Yeah, we had the whole OJ. We talked about that already tonight. Daniel A says, to me, ideal players are guys like Peyton Manning, Shaquille O'Neal, Charles Barkley, legends with amazing personalities. And I buy into that. You know, I collect Shaquille O'Neal cards, and one of the things that makes me comfortable about it is that he's still in the public eye. He's got a great personality. People love Shaq. I love Shaq. Loved him back then. Love him still today. So I think that, and now Peyton Manning is doing the same thing. An all-time great, just like Shaquille, but has a great personality. People love him. They're still tuning into him. I think that's really, really important right there. Makes me wonder, like for a guy like Ken Griffey Jr., I could say, why doesn't Ken Griffey do something? Well, he doesn't have to. It's up to him. Maybe it's not in his personality to do it. But if he were to get out there, I mean, the guy's already so well loved in the hobby, he'd probably be even more well loved. Now, if he was a terrible broadcaster and didn't say smart things, it could have a negative effect too. Some of these guys are really good at it. Some just aren't.
I don't know. I feel like Ken Griffey Jr. has this essence of cool, and the less you see and hear of him, the better.
And I think you're probably right. Yeah.
The mystery, you know, I mean, he talks a lot, but you see him in his interviews. He's just, I don't know if he's a broadcaster, but yeah, he's just that guy, man. Sorry. He's my favorite.
Average Joe says Taves is top 100 for sure. Yeah, at one time he would have been. I don't know if he is anymore. I just don't know that I would put him in that list anymore. Kevin says, example of the collectability of infamy, the Mendez brothers on an otherwise worthless Mark Jackson card. That's Kevin's right. To me, that's a gimmicky sort of. That's a gimmick.
That is gimmicky, yeah.
And it's not one that is, it's like the Billy Ripken, the FF card. I used to own a copy of it. And then I decided to myself, I don't need this card anymore. It was fun at the time, but there's nothing, the guy, the athlete doesn't belong in my collection. And that's what I try to look at. Does the athlete belong, or the character? I do have the 1966 Black Bat Batman card. I love the card. And I have the Robin too. I love them. They belong in my collection. But does a Mark Jackson card with the Mendez brothers belong? Does the Billy Ripken FF card? No, those guys wouldn't get in my card, in my collection without those aspects of the card. So I don't think they should get in with it. That's just me, though. That's just
Billy Ripken. Depending on how old you are, that's kind of an iconic card for people like my age. I think that's a cool card. But yeah, other than that, there's no reason for that. Yeah, there's no reason for that card to matter other than that.
Other than that, and it is neat and it's funny, and you got the F word on the card, so that's I guess that's fun. And I thought it was pretty cool back in the day, but I'm kind of over it now. Here we are, 30 something years later. Mosaic Mind says Albert Pujols, among the greatest players ever, certain Hall of Famer. Somehow he avoided the steroid tag that took out Bonds, Clemens, Sosa, and McGuire. Yeah, fact. Joe Hobby, off-court hobby history. Many collectors in the 1980s hoarded Bill Bradley cards of the New York Knicks. He was elected as U.S. Senator, and many anticipated he would end up in the White House. That reminds me of the Rocks card, where a lot of people were buying up that I forget what the card is called, his Bumblebee card. A lot of people were buying up his Bumblebee card, thinking that one day The Rock could become the president of the United States. Maybe he will. You never know. We'll have to see. We'll have to see. But that's similar. People are sometimes looking for what can this person do after their career. I don't think there's many cases of it, but there are some, and we've just talked about two of them right there. Skeppy says, was Shaq the villain or the young star trying not to be the villain? Good question. I don't have the answer for that. And then John says, Taves got lost in translation in the Blackhawks dumpster fire. Surprised he didn't ask for a trade years ago. It's on him in a sense. Yes, I agree with that myself. I do. Joe Hobby says, Johnny Manziel is the epitome of off-field issues overtaking a player's career. He was a hobby darling in 2014 that boosted the entire hobby for a year, only to be overtaken by his off-field demons. Like another great example of money being put into a player who's a prospect because of potential, and then it gets completely derailed. Yeah,
that happens a lot
in these young players.
That's something you got to factor in when they're young. It goes back to you saying they're young, and they're young like that. You're investing all this money in the 20-year-old who's going to make 20-year-old decisions sometimes. But what kind of decisions were you making when you were 20? I mean, I don't think everybody was in the seminary, so.
No, you're right, for sure. How about this one from Ben Diamond? Says Julius Erving and Dan Marino both had kids out of wedlock. No one seems to care. Yeah, I mean, not only do I not care, and listen, I have compassion for the wives who were cheated on. Certainly, I don't wish that upon anybody. But it's not going to listen. Number one, I didn't know that. So, and am I going to now go sell off my Dr. J and my Dan Marino cards? Absolutely not. Absolutely not. Just it's not something that comes into my thought process when I'm deciding what player I want in my career. Like, to me, the fact that Dr. J is a top 20 basketball player of all time is more important than what he did in his personal life. Off-field shenanigans, there's a hierarchy of them. Some of them will cause me to not buy your cards or to sell your cards because I don't want to have anything to do with you. And some of them will cause me to say, well, that's your decision. I'm not going to judge you for it. That's how you're living your life. I'm not going to go off and sell your cards because of it. So, okay, Victory Investments in the house says, I lost money in 2014 prospecting on Manziel. His cards were hot and I learned a great lesson. So right there, Dennis. You need to learn lessons. We need to learn lessons because history does repeat itself at times, and we need to learn from them. Keep in mind, don't let this event here with Wander Franco, don't forget it, because it can happen again. And just diversify, balance yourself out. That's all. That's the only advice I could really give on that.
I got great advice for you. You want to hear my advice for everybody? This is the foolproof advice. Just buy Ken Griffey Jr. cards. You're always going to be okay. I'm kidding.
Full transparency. That's all Dennis collects.
Just kidding. Or Wayne Gretzky or Mario Lemieux.
Colin Kaepernick cards may have some value still because he's regarded as a historical political activist while being a football player. Kaepernick went off the rails with his football career. Yeah, that's right. But he has built up some
polarizing.
He's polarizing, but he's also built up even more supporters because of taking the knee and those sorts of behaviors. So, you can become more well known on mainstream media for your off-field shenanigans, just to use the title of the episode, but those might actually help you in some cases. In the absence of excelling at your sport, or just leaving it altogether. So Mosaic Mind says, how do people feel now about Lonzo Ball cards that they bought during the hype years? Basketball cards can have insane price gyrations. I mean, they're gonna, it's a good point, Mosaic Mind. How are they feeling? I think if you bought for $1,000, they're worth $150 right now. You're not feeling too good about that right now. John says that the stress and added pressure destroys a player's ability to perform. It's a self-fulfilling prophecy. Rage says, who cares about Dr. J and Dan Marino? What they did in their household doesn't concern me unless it involves a child. Then you're dead to me. Simple, you're dead to me at that point, says Rage.
Pretty good line to draw there, buddy.
Daniel A says the safest play are dead legend players. And, it's just always awkward to say dead players, but it's true. That is the safest play, as long as they're not the Ty Cobbs and the Shoeless Joe Jacksons, who, now I'm not saying those aren't good plays, hobby-wise and value-wise, they are, especially with the debunking of Ty Cobb and that, but you still got to be careful with that. And I'm sure most people would be, one of these days, OJ Simpson's going to die. He's still a legend on the field, but is that going to help him that he died? Probably not. The hierarchy of shenanigans, says EL. Yeah, that might have been the title. If we titled our episodes, Dennis, after we did them, that might have been the title. Hierarchy.
That would have been a good one. Yeah.
Hierarchy of shenanigans. So
that would get us into our own shenanigans, because if we started ranking what we think is the most destructive thing, that's going to cause that'll be very polarizing, I think.
Yeah, no, definitely would be that. We'd have to be careful there. So let's just talk a little about, Dennis, about, when players get injured and the hobby values come down because they're not playing. If you're out for a season, people aren't going to be, in general, buying a lot of your cards. And if they're not buying, that means that, simple supply demand curve, your values are going to decrease unless no one sells. But what happens is people start to dump. So they do sell. That's just hobby behavior.
Mm-hmm.
Now, when you have a player who does something really stupid off the field, off the ice, off the court, their values do come down as well. I think their values in general do come down. But in the case of the injured player, we talked about this earlier. Is that a really good opportunity? If you can mentally get around the fact that that player is hurt and might be out for a year, can you get around the psychology of it and start buying up that player's cards? Be the contrarian, because, and Crazy Kev throws out Ronald Acuna right here. I believe, and I don't know for sure, but I believe that Ronald Acuna got hurt. People dumped off his cards, probably for a loss or at a lot lower of a value than they were before. Comes back, has a good career or good performance since coming back, and now his cards are back to where they were. I would have hated to have sold those cards the day he got injured, but I would have loved to have bought them. Now, I'm not sure if what I just said about, the timeline of Ronald Acuna is correct, but if I am correct, and even if not, Dennis, can you give your thoughts on that?
Yeah, Ronald Acuna, that's actually funny. I made a call with my good buddy Mike, Daddy Rips, on one of our shows back in Luka Tiger days, where we picked our NL Player of the Year MVP candidate. And I picked Ronald Acuna Jr. for that exact reason. I thought, this is a really dynamic baseball player. He's young. He's coming off an injury that he's fully recovered from. He took it easy the year before, and he's motivated. I think he's primed to have a really big year, and he's having that big year. Unfortunately, I've already offloaded his card that I was trying to play on it. But no, I think there's a tremendous opportunity for arbitrage there. You get a guy who gets hurt. Maybe people aren't thinking about him anymore because they're focusing on the next class of cards coming up or players, the new rookies that are coming into the league. And they forget about a guy like Ronald Acuna Jr. I think that people are probably forgetting Fernando Tatis Jr. I mean, what? I don't know. I feel like Fernando Tatis Jr. in the next couple of years might be a really, really great play. He goes to the right team, which could happen. That could be big for his market. That could be great for his career. I think there's another player right there that can have a breakout. I mean, that happens a lot. And I mean, I know baseball pretty well, so that'll happen in baseball. I mean, you think about hockey. I can't speak to that because you're a bit more hip to that, but basketball too. I mean, is Ja Morant a play? I don't know. I mean, he's still a dynamic basketball player whenever he does come back. I mean, he just made idiotic decisions. Can he stop making those types of decisions and grow up and mature and then have his prolific career after that? And you can take advantage of a dip right now that has nothing to do with him being injured or anything like that. That's going to affect his play. And once he does play, I think that's a great point.
Well, you bring up Ja. I think is a great example. I mean, he just turned 24 5 days ago. I just looked it up. He just turned 24 years old. He's a youngster. He's a kid for all intents and purposes. This is a kid who made some bad decisions. I'm not sitting here saying he's a good guy or nothing. I don't know the kid at all. But if he rehabilitates and if he has a dynamic career, I, as a collector of all-time greats, would happily add his card to my collection because he rehabilitated and he made mistakes as a 23-year-old. I'm willing to see past the mistakes a 23-year-old makes down the road if they rehabilitate and if they make good on their mistakes. No free passes, but I'd happily add a card of that player into my collection at a point in the future.
I think there are certain things that you can't rehabilitate from, though. I think, and I'm not going to name them off. I think everybody in this room right now, and you and myself included, know what those things are. We don't have to talk about them. But those things, if you're guilty of those things, that's I think, a death nail.
I'm talking about flashing a gun.
Right. You talk about some of these just really poor decisions that could be overcome with maturity, a goodwill tour, great play, consistent great play. Yeah, that stuff goes in the rearview mirror pretty quick, and people kind of just move on because there was another comment in the comment section that said people just move on to the next thing, so people can recover much easier these days because we're fickle and we have our attention spans are like 30 seconds long, and so something else will happen. It all depends on the severity of whatever it is you're accused of, but if you put the work in, you could probably rehabilitate. And if you buy those cards when everybody like me is telling you to sell, I'm not telling anybody to sell, but if I'm selling all my Wanders and, say none of this is even true and he comes back and it's great, and yeah, you're probably winning right there. But I don't know. I think it all comes down to whatever it is that the player is accused of and all that stuff. And whether he, like you said, whether he actually does truly rehabilitate his image.
You are, without even thinking of it, you are referring to the hierarchy of shenanigans again.
There we go.
The professor wants to know, will the MLB ever forgive Pete Rose? Gambling acceptance in our society is changing. Honestly, I mean, my perspective is that the MLB. I was thinking society seems to have forgiven Pete Rose. I don't care that he gambled on baseball. I don't think many people care anymore. I think that what's happened is that the public has kind of decided that the MLB Hall of Fame is a bit of a joke because some of these guys aren't in it. So
right.
I don't know any Hall of Fame that's really even the NHL Hall of Fame is just called the Hall of Good or the Hall of Great, maybe. But okay. Joe Hobby says many think that Michael Jordan was forced to retire in 1993 because of his gambling issues and his ties to criminal enterprise. If that's the case, didn't affect him at all, at least long term. Professor says, does Andrew Luck follow the 7-year rule of waiting to invest? I do believe he left before 7 years was up. So yes, that rule would have saved you from Andrew Luck at that point. The Rage says, I held all my TG. Who's TG? Because I knew he could be special, him, Vladdy, and even Tatis. Okay, let's use full names, please, Rage. Please use full names.
TG.
EL says, Favre cards seemed to stay steady. I remember when that news came out, I was trying to figure out what did Favre do wrong? You know, you find out, and then you see some commentary, but it's kind of all gone into the past. And from what I can tell, Favre cards are doing just fine. I follow them somewhat. I have a hobby friend who collects Brett Favre. So I think Favre cards are doing just fine right now. Hobby Champ says, I would never sell cards of active players who were at their lowest ever. It just doesn't make sense. Wait for the comeback. Wait for the uptick. Yeah, that makes sense to me, Hobby Champs. There might be exceptions for me. There might be for me. But it's more of a moral issue than it is like a valuation issue. So we'll have to see. We'll have to see what happens. Mosaic Mind says, speculating on the value of hot rookie players is fun in the way gambling can be fun. That is the appeal. You could cash in big time or flop and everything in between. Placing bets is exciting. Yeah, there's no doubt about it. No doubt about it. The hobby is full of opportunities to place your bets. Opening up a box of product, entering a group break, entering a Raz, if those are still a thing. I think they are. Prospecting on a young player, even selling a card at any given time is somewhat of a gamble that the card is going to go down in value or won't go up a lot in value. Depends how you look at it. We're always placing bets in this hobby, and it is fun. I think it's important. I'm not going to say that. I'm going to say the way I approach it, I try to minimize my risk. I'm a bit risk adverse. I don't look to put myself in those situations. I don't like the big highs, and I don't like the big ups and the big downs, the big highs and lows. I'm a more even-keeled person, and to maintain that, I used to break product. I'd go into the LCS and I'd say to myself, okay, if I'm gonna spend $1,000 on breaking 5 boxes of cards for the month, I'm also going to spend $1,000 on buying a really nice single out of the showcase that I know is going to be able to maintain its value. That was my approach. That was my instant balancing of my, call it, portfolio for the night, for the day, Yeah. But then I realized, well, I was never winning when I was opening product. So I thought, I'm just going to stop opening product. And now it's all uphill from here. It's only going to be good. And it worked out well. All right.
It's fun though. I mean, it's fun. I bought the Bowman Chrome hobby boxes. I bought 2 of them today for myself. I'm going to keep them, probably open them with my son. It's fun. I don't expect to get anything. It's one of those plays where I'm like, yeah, I'll do that for fun. That's kind of where I need to play because I can't afford to buy some of the grippies I like anymore. But that's an enjoyable thing. But I've already put myself in a good position with some of the cards I bought that are going to be good long term. But you still want to have some fun in the hobby too. There's nothing wrong with that.
Yeah. There is fun in opening product. And when you do it with your kid, to me, that's now entertainment less than gambling. And I think it just depends what your purpose is. And that's for everybody to decide for themselves, for sure. John says, best time to buy Austin Matthews is in his entire career is quite possibly right now. Low goal season for Matthews, new standards, possibly injured, failed during the playoffs. Yeah, there's talk that he might have been playing injured for the past several months. He went from 60 goals to 40 if he has a bounce back season, that will do wonders for his cards. And yeah, they have come down in value, but a lot of stuff has for sure. Rage says, from growing up in a crazy high violence city myself, the one and only thing Ja needs to do is change the company he is around, period. And that to me is a sign of rehabilitation. That is a sign of, now these are like, I don't know Ja or his crew, but if these are his lifelong buddies, it's going to be hard for him to not hang out with them at all anymore, but maybe he just has to put up some boundaries and say, maybe he just needs a curfew is all he might need. Mookie Chilson says, steroids is a deal breaker to me. Anyone who gets pinched for it at this point is both a cheater and a massive fool. That's the thing, right? If you get caught doing steroids now, or if you're doing steroids now, you are a massive fool on top of cheating. And back in the day, you were only cheating. You weren't being a massive fool because we didn't know what the repercussions would be and how the response would be, as much, I should say. So I like that comment from Mookie. A massive fool and a cheater, definitely. Hobby Champ says, Ja could score 60 points in his first game back, and all is forgotten. I mean, it all will be forgotten by a lot of people if that happens, for sure. Vintage Card Collector says, Ja is complicated. I think the biggest issue is will off-court problems preventing him from having a long career? Will the off-court problems prevent him from having a long career? That is the risk. Yeah, exactly. And that's where if you're buying his cards now at an all-time low, you are gambling that he may or may not have a great career. He has all the tools except the mind. He has to sharpen the brain tool,
which is a really important piece of living your life.
Very important. Can't overlook the brain. Don't overlook the brain when assessing someone's level of skill. Stu says John needs to hang out with some adults. Probably a very good advice right there. Mosaic Mind says Pete Rose may get into the Hall of Fame, but not while he's alive. Yeah, that seems to be the direction that is going. Definitely. Oh, now we're guessing who is Tiger Woods. TG is Tiger Woods. TG for Tiger. Maybe it's Tony Gwynn. Everyone's guessing who Tiger Woods is. Rage says it's thank God. Garrett Patrick, for hockey, it'll be interesting to see how the Russian player cards do with all that's going on, up or down. Yeah, I mean, that's a tough one, right? I mean, these Russian players, if they speak out against their country, well, their families are going to get hurt back home. So they're really caught in a tough place. And it's, they're not fighting the war. We don't know what their personal beliefs are because they're not putting it out there. At least they don't seem to be putting them out there. So that's just that's a tough one, Garrett. Not going to stop me from owning cards of Russian players. Now, I have tons of compassion for the Ukraine, and I don't if I have to pick a side, it's going to be the Ukraine. I guess I can say that on a sports card show, but yeah,
it's a tough your opinion. That's your opinion. You can say that. Absolutely.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Okay. EL says, what did Tony Gwynn do? Murder baseballs is all I can think of.
He didn't do anything. He's a lovable guy.
Back to dead players. Ben Diamond says, just saying, even dead players can be affected by the overall market, which MJ basically, Ben is right here, but that's kind of outside of this whole discussion, right? Yes, we're not talking overall market. We're talking within the market. But yes, overall market is there are external factors, macroeconomic issues going on around us at all times that can impact the whole hobby, but we are focusing on the micro here, not the macro. Daniel A says, okay, but I do like to collect multiple players. I have Jordans too. Very good. John says, this is why I bought everything top tier rookie Jonathan Huberdeau. He had the highest drop in points in 1 year in NHL history. The rebound season without Sutter is inevitable. I agree with you, John. I think it's inevitable too, but I don't know that. And listen, Huberdeau plays for my Calgary Flames, my favorite team. But I still don't know if he's collectible. Sure, if you like the player, he's collectible. But I don't know if he's a guy that's values are going to go skyrocketing even with a big season. He was second overall in the league 2 years ago, or third maybe, and his cards didn't do too much. But he was playing in Florida, which was not the greatest market. So there you go. But Daniel says he will have a bounce back year. John says Russian names are unattractive to North American collectors. I don't mean it in a bad way. They're simply harder to pronounce and remember. Fair enough, but there are certain players who transcend that limitation and do just fine. And, you know, the same, try to say Giannis Antetokounmpo. I mean, the guy does fine. Even some people don't even know how to say Luka Doncic, you know, so it's not just Russian players. There are other players that have that going on as well with them too. It says it sounds dumb, but it affects value. I've said before that a player's looks can affect their hobby value. I think I mentioned this in an episode a couple of years ago. Like a good-looking player may get more hobby love than a player who is deemed to be unattractive. It's a funny thing to talk about.
It is. Like you look kind of, you know, look at Jokic. Is it Jokic? Is it
Jokic, I think.
Oh, it's Jokic. I thought it was Jokic. I mean, his name was different. I mean, I just mispronounced it this whole time. He's not. I mean, he's two-time MVP, three-time MVP, two-time. I mean, he's an incredible player, and his name is kind of difficult. Yeah.
Max Trubin says, "I'm a Soviet immigrant. Don't speak of things you don't understand. Stay in your lane, sir." I assume you're talking to me, Max, and I appreciate the comments, but I'm going to say what I want to say, my guy. I'm going to say what I want to say. So I think
he might be referring to the gentleman that spoke about the names are hard to pronounce, and that's why North American collectors don't like them. So,
but is that about not understanding things? It says, don't speak of things you don't understand. So the name, I don't think that's what Max is getting at. But despite that, he says, you know nothing about Russia. Don't talk about it. Now I just want to talk about it more, Max.
I think he's talking about the other guy. Am I correct here, Max? You got to respond here. Let us know. Are you talking to Jeremy, or are you talking to the other guy in the comment section?
Well, he says damn right here.
Yeah, he says damn right, but you got to respond to that, Max. All right, anyway,
let's keep going. Let's keep going. Stukes here says Kaprizov is still very strong in Minnesota. Yeah, Russian player. Daniel A says McGillney never sounded Russian to me. Jokic right there with the CH. Yep. Jokic. I see. That's how you said it. Max says, you are fine, sir. Two different cultures and people. Definitely two different cultures and people.
You didn't really answer the question, Max, but all right.
I did respond. I don't know. It's okay. Listen, let's let Max do it. It's okay, Max. Listen, if I offended you, I apologize, Max. I don't want to offend you, but I also, I'm gonna have my thoughts. And I think all I said was that if I had to, I'm going to be, if I had to take a side, I would side with the Ukraine. Well, maybe that's because of what I'm being fed on the news, right? Which is Russia just murdering all these Ukrainian people. So I don't know, but I guess I'm sure there's more to it. John says, I meant it from a North American perspective. My message was quite clear and non-offensive. I agree. I thought it was. Okay. Anyway, we don't need to harp on that anymore. I've already taken it too far. Mike Kemmel, again, thanks for being there. Never pick a side, says Anthony. Never pick a side. Well, you never pick a side, Anthony. You never pick a side.
I'll pick any side I want. No one tells me what to do.
No one puts baby in a corner.
We're getting spicy.
But you know what's funny, Dennis? Because even when I said, I'm like, oh, now we're talking politics and stuff. I knew that it could. Rage makes the best comment right there. I side with humanity right there. That's exactly what I'm getting at right there. It's myself too.
All good, man.
Well, listen, we've covered the various bullet points on our outline for the show here today. I mean, okay, I'm not even going to thank you for the comment, Mike Kemmel. I'm not even going to read it. We're not going to touch on this Russia issue anymore. I wish safety and health and prosperity for all Russians and all Ukrainians and all of humanity. I think that's pretty simple. Cracker Wax says, taking stock of politics. What have I come into? Yeah. Sorry, Cracker. Sorry. EL, thank you very much. We are going to wrap up, everybody. So, as always, thank you for joining Taking Stock with myself and Dennis Zender. We look forward to these episodes because we have great engagement with you guys. We went a bit off the rails today, and not something we like to do too much. And I'm probably going to shake my head at myself later. So I apologize if I did offend anybody. John says NHL Russian players should sell for way more because they are amazing. The best goalies in the league are all Russians. He's right about that. That is true. I can say I've always loved the Russians, from Sergei Fedorov to Ilya Kovalchuk when he was a superstar in the league, to Alex Ovechkin.
I love Fedorov.
Alexander McGillney. Like, I've always loved these Russian players.
Oh yeah. Pavel Bure is one of my favorite players growing up, man. I have his jersey. I spent like $300 on an authentic Canucks Pavel Bure number 10, not his older number 10 jersey. So I'm showing my love. Don't worry about it.
Pavel Bure, for sure. Yeah, Max, I read your comment here, Max, and I sympathize with you. And you know what? This comment from Max, it's not just being Russian and dealing with it. Any minority, and I'm not saying Russian's a minority, maybe it is, I don't know, in the US at least, or North America, but all minorities, all religious groups, all really non-white skinned people deal with some sort of bashing their entire life. And I think we again, here we go, getting off the topic of sports cards.
No, but it's okay. You and I are both very white guys. I can, we're both, and we don't have to deal with the same.
Side with humanity is the takeaway here.
That is the takeaway. Yeah.
Side with humanity. Doesn't matter where you're from, what country, because at the end of the day, even a guy like Max Trubin is not out there fighting on the lines, I don't think, and doing things. But anyway, okay, let's just move on. Let's move on. I don't want to get into it anymore. John says Fedorov is one of my favorite players ever. Mine too, John. He would play D-man. Yes, he would. Thank you, Mike. Max, okay, we're getting back on the same page. McGillney not in the Hall of Fame is a shame, Daniel. He should be in the Hall of Fame, and I think he's going to get there. I think it's next year he'll probably get in, and he should be, and I will celebrate that. Pavel Bure was such a savage. Yes, he was. Definitely. Thank you, Rage. Mike says Bure is my favorite player too. Max, okay, we'll keep going. Mookie says, here we go. This is the John Rocker portion of the chat. There you go. John was stating that North American idiots can't spell or remember Russian names, so they don't buy them as much as local players that are not as good. I thought that was a fair comment, John. I thought the comment was a realistic, practical type of comment that sometimes players' names, can hurt their collectability. I think that's true. It doesn't matter where they're from.
I don't know. I feel kind of offended right now. Are you calling me an idiot, John, because I called him Jokic?
No.
I'm just kidding. It's
but
all
then
good. Hey, you know what?
Then I just want to say,
go ahead.
Player like Giannis. Giannis has such a long last name. Nobody can pronounce it, although I can, Antetokounmpo, but that's why the hobby has gone to use his first name. So that they don't need to say his last name, and can still collect him, I suppose. So there we go. Rage says, you're human, Max. That's all that matters. Rage, you have a good night too. Max, you made the chat. Nice to have you. Hope we see you back here.
Yep.
Ben says, in Soviet Russia, cards collect you. I don't get it. Pavel Datsyuk, another great Russian player. Mosaic Mind, here's a tough name to pronounce, Karl Yastrzemski. It's hard to pronounce it phonetically, but when you know how to say it, you know how to say it for sure. Datsyuk literally changed the game. Datsyuk was known as, I think, the magician. He was so good. Datsyuk was amazing. Thanks, Max. Thank you to have you here and everybody else. Rage, you as well. All right, guys, we're going to wrap up. Dennis has to go do some golfing or something. So let's let Dennis get to the rest of his world. I don't know. Let me read. What did you say? I got. Oh, that was
my wife is calling me. But
I don't know. Golfing. Here's a good comment. Here's a good comment I want to read from Mookie. He says, it's such an incredible compliment that all these players come from all over the world to compete and entertain us here in North America.
That's cool. Yeah.
That is cool, right? That is pretty cool. Okay, guys. Let's just wrap this up. Thanks everybody for joining. We appreciate it as always. Hopefully we didn't offend anybody tonight. If we did, we retract it. Certainly I have no interest in doing that. And if and just to say, if I make a comment that is uninformed, I definitely do not want to do that and regret it and would rather be informed and move forward from there. So please cut me some slack that way. All right. Thank you, Rick Hawkins. Great to see you. We will keep them coming. Glad to have you. Jeremy, Mr. Foul Fireball, we'll be seeing you in a few weeks at the Anaheim show. I have to think I'll see you there yet again. Mosaic Minds, thank you very much. All right, guys. Have a great rest of the week. It is Tuesday tonight, so enjoy the balance of the week. We'll be back, we believe, in a couple of weeks for another episode of Taking Stock. We are trying to do this every second Tuesday. But with that, on behalf of that handsome devil right there and myself, have a great night, everybody. Thanks for joining. This episode of Taking Stock is